Let me tell you about my background a little bit. I have a PsyD. I achieved it overseas in England at Oxford. My background is basically I was trained analytically. I use a lot of hypnosis and mind entrainment, neurobiotechniques in my office. I have a number of postdoctoral degrees in forensics, but the thing that I think Dr. J would like to hear is that I spent 5 years working in a pediatric neurologist's office, working with kids, most of whom are on the spectrum, and kids who have severe cases of ADHD. I work with a full array of patients. I was an athlete. I ran the city marathon. I did 110-mile bike rides. And then in 2015, I was diagnosed with leukemia. Unfortunately, my mutations in my genetics was such that it warranted me having a bone marrow transplant, or else I was going to be playing with dice that I didn't want to roll. So I had the transplant, and unfortunately, because of a compromised immune system, and about 7 months later in 2016 in November, I was diagnosed with a very rare variation of Guillain-Barré syndrome. Within 2 to 3 weeks, just so you know the type of person I am, I was a total quadriplegic. The only thing that I did not require at the time was a ventilator, but I could not blink my eyes, I could not talk, I could not even move my finger. They had to sew my eyes closed because they were worried about my corneas drying out. That wasn't a pleasant experience. And I lived in my head for almost 7 months. I went from 187 pounds of body build, and when I left the hospital at the end of May of 2017, I was down to 127 pounds, and the diagnosis was that I was going to be a quadriplegic in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. My own mental fortitude has to do with my background. When we get to know each other, you'll find out, was that was no way that I was going to live the rest of my life. And to make a very long story short, it's now 2020, and I have rehabilitated myself to the point where I'm walking with one cane. The neurologist that I see tells me that I'm a 1 in a million person. He's changed his lecture at the medical school where he teaches. And I'm a very positively focused individual who really doesn't accept no as an answer. So you have me in a nutshell right now, and probably more than you want to hear, but I wanted you to know what makes me tick.
And Michael, you should add that the AVACEN took your pain from 8 to a 4.
Okay, so the thing that I was left with from the Guillain-Barré, which I'm still recovering from because I still have some contractures in my feet, was horrific muscular and neurological pain, especially in my forearms and my hands. My legs to a certain degree, but it was mostly I'd wake up in the morning and it would take me a good 2 hours before I could really begin to move around freely. And I can tell you right now that I've used the AVACEN for the last 6 months on a daily basis. My wife and I used to go down to our house in Florida very frequently. We just started doing that again. And one trip we forgot the machine at home. And my wife uses it for pain control as well. Within 2 to 3 days after being at our home in Florida, we both looked at each other and said, "How are you feeling?" And I said, "I'm missing the AVACEN." And she said the same thing, and we haven't been without it since. So I can tell you that I really attribute a lot of my rehabilitation to that AVACEN machine, not in terms of just the pain control, but I also think that it's affected my ability, my proprioception ability, and other areas of my physiology and mental attitude. And I'm a very big proponent of the device.